Psionics has a reputation. It's too complicated, too bolted on. It doesn't fit in a fantasy game. Maybe it's good for something like Thundar the Barbarian or Gamma World. Most tables skip it. And the ones that actually use it house rule the heck out of it, into something that isn't even recognizable in the player's handbook, right? But here's what I want to establish before we go anywhere. Almost nobody who says psionics is too complicated has actually read the rules. Maybe they've opened up the Appendix I and saw 7 pages of tables and closed the book, right? And I did that for years too. So today we're actually going to read it, and what Gary built in there is not a psychotic or psychic power bolted onto a character sheet. It's a complete second combat system running parallel to the one that you already know. So you guys, welcome back to the DM and Friends. I am DM Angelo, and Gary wrote the manual and I run it, and here we go. So who even gets psionics? Let's talk about that right out the gate. And that's on page 110 of the Player's Handbook. And yes, Dan, I am going to fold it. And this is my Player's Handbook. So turn to page 110. Okay. So start with how rare this is, right? Because it matters. And in the Player's Handbook, he writes, characters with one or more unmodified intelligence, wisdom, or charisma ability score above 16 or higher might have a psionic ability. Okay, whether or not this ability is possessed is then determined by a dice roll using percentage dice. Right, any score 0, 0, 100, right, indicates that ability exists. Right. So a natural 100%, on a 100 roll on a percentage die, that's a base chance. And obviously there's adjustments, and I'll get to that. So but imagine the odds there. I mean, the odds are incredible, right? So it's very, very rare, right? So, and then 1%, right? But you do get bonuses. 2.5 points for each point of intelligence above 16, 1.5 for wisdom, and 0.5 point for charisma, right? Even a character with an 18 intelligence, 18 wisdom is only pushing that window to a handful of percentage point, right? So this is not a class. This is not a choice. You do not decide to be psionic, right? It's a lightning strike that happens during character creation, right? And when it does hit, look at what you get. Psionic strength is rolled. You roll a range of 10 to 344 points. Half is attack strength, half is defense strength. That's your entire economy for the system, right? You spend those points, they run out, you have to rest to get them back, right? So one more thing from that same page, and this is the part that I think people miss, right? Psionics is no way affected, no way affects the performance of the character in his or her chosen class, right? Except as possible behavior modifiers, right? So it sits on top of your class. So like a psionic fighter is still a fighter. A psionic thief is still a thief. This is a completely separate axis of compatibility, And this is the one, the first hint that we're looking at a separate game, right? So let's talk about, let's talk, back on page 110, right? So there's 5, let's talk about the attack modes and defense modes, right? There's 5 and 5, right? And unlike the disciplines, right, which you roll for randomly, you choose these. You would choose your attack modes and your defense modes, right? Attack modes with the point cost right in the name, right? So you have Psionic Blast is 20 points, Mind Thrust 4 points, Ego Whip 7, ID Insinuation 10, Psionic Crush 14, whatever. Defense modes, Mind Blank is 1 point, Thought Shield, Mental Barrier, and Intellect Fortress, Tower of Will is 10. Look on that chart on page 111. 110, sorry. 110. now look at what these two lists do together, right? 5 attacks against 5 defenses is 25 different matchups, right? And each single one of those 25 has its own outcome, right? Cross-reference against 6 different psionic strength brackets, right? That's 150 results at one table. Gary didn't write, make a saving throw. He wrote a rock, scissors, I guess he wrote a rock, scissors, rock, paper, scissors metrics. Actually it's really rock, scissors, paper, lizard, Spock, because there's so many of them, right? Where the correct defense against mind thrust is different from the correct against psychic crush, right? So the right answer is going to change depending on how much strength each side has left, right? And here's a detail that tells how seriously Gary kind of took this, right? Psionic Blast is the only attack mode that works on a non-psionic creature, right? And to use it in that way, you need the current attack strength of at least 100 points, right? Below that, you cannot touch a non-psionic mind at all. And that's rare to even have above 100, right? So, the Dungeon Master's Guide on page 76. And I'm going to grab my DMG, of course, on page 76. And this is the part of my book that is totally destroyed. Because here's, you know what I'm going to do? I'm not even going to hold up the book, right? I'm going to take out the pages, okay? So here we go, because they are unhinged. So on page 76 of the DMG, right? Psionic versus psionic in mental combat, right? This is the table, and I want to see the actual outcomes, right? Because this is where psionic combat stops being abstract and starts being the most dangerous thing in AD&D. Obviously, it's the most rarest too, but so most results are numbers, points of defense, strength you lose, fine, right? Attrition, but scattered through that table are letters, right? And these letters are what nobody talks about, right? So, C is confused, right? 2 to 8 rounds, no psionic activity possible, right? D is dazed, right? 1 to 4 turns, right? No activity, right? Wound, right? W is wounded, right? So wounded psionically, right? 1 attack mode, defense mode, or discipline is unusable for 2 to 8 weeks, right? Sleeping, a coma lasting for 1 to 4 weeks, right? P, permanent loss of 1 attack mode, right? Robot, your mind is under the control of the victor until released. 2 to 8 weeks pass. I mean, super crazy. Idiocy, psionic ability lost forever, curable only by a heal spell. K, killed. Raised or resurrection are possible, but psionic ability is gone permanently. Like, totally crazy, right? So read this list again and think about what that means at your table. A failed psionic exchange doesn't cost you hit points. It costs you your mind, your identity, or your character permanently in ways that the cleric can't even undo. And the pace, right? Psionic combat runs on one exchange per segment. So 10 exchanges in a melee round. Fast. While the fighter is swinging the sword once, 2 psionic minds have attacked and defended each other 10 whole times. That's why the DMG tells the referee to stop everything else when a psionic combat starts. It's not happening inside your combat round. It's happening on a completely different clock. So, what did Gary actually build here, right? A separate resource economy. Psionic strength points spend and recover independently of hit points and spell slots. 150 results combat matrix. A resolution clock running 10 times faster than physical combat. Consequences that include permanent ability loss, mind control, and death. and a detection method so rare that most characters will never have it, right? You know, that is not a bolted on system. That's a second game sitting inside the first one. You know, fully written, fully playable, and almost entirely unused for nearly 50 years. You know, how many tables you run it? And Gary knew exactly what he built. The first line in Appendix I, right? Or, you know, if your DM opts to include psionic abilities in your campaign, he wrote, you know, 7-page rules and then told you they were optional, right? Obviously, the whole game is, you know, I run it all, but you know, you can pull what you want. That's not weakness, right? That's an honest man labeling a system that this size, so you can make an informed choice, you know, about it, right? I use psionics. I know I'm crazy. I use it. The funny thing is, like, it started back in AD&D, right? So AD&D had a psionic system, and I was running AD&D back in the day, and I had Eric Coe had rolled up right at the table. We rolled characters, and he rolled psionics for his paladin, and so crazy. I think we were playing AD&D with the supplements, so Greyhawk and Blackmore and all those. So he had a paladin that had psionics. He had a very low psionic strength. But he has psionics, but very, very interesting. Yeah. And I didn't even get into the discipline side of psionics, which you as you gain levels, there's more disciplines that you can add on. And there's really cool, crazy, out the wall, wacky, kooky things that you can do. Telekinesis and all these other different things, detections and stuff like that. But psionics is crazy. It's very cool. I use it at my table 99 times out of 1, nobody has it. So, and that's how it's really meant to be. So, Tenkar is going to be coming to you from the BX angle, where psionics doesn't exist at all. And so I love to hear what he's going to say. And he'll tell you why it was, you know, the right call. So we're going to hear from him. Greyhawk Rogren is going to have his own take. He might bring in the AD&D history behind it. Well, we'll see. We'll see what all these guys are going to be talking about with this. But you guys, tell me in your comments, have you ever run psionic combat at your table? Do you allow it at your table? Because I know a lot of DMs that just don't play with psionics. They think it's crazy. And how do you guys, if you do, how do you track the strength points, and how do you track combat? You know, or you skip it all, you know. I want the honest count. Tell me in the comments, guys. All right, you guys, well, I am DM Angelo, and yes, I have a destroyed DMG. And keep gaming, guys. We'll see you guys on the next one. Take care of each other. Bye-bye.